once that money come in and it hits the bank account and the thing is closed and you're like, wow, like what's that like?
So I'll give you a counterintuitive answer. It feels like emptiness. The minute we sold the company, it was a complete anticlimax experience. Yeah. So we had golden handcuffs, but we gave away most of the gold. We actually had like 2.5 retention period. Okay. I mean, we gave most of the holdback, okay, to go and start PointFive.
They're talking millions, I have to assume.
Yes. But I have to say, like, I don't feel sorry for this decision for a second. And another 6 in safe a few months later. And then we just closed another 20 million round a few months ago.
That's product market fit.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
I called it the product market fit question.
Product market fit.
Product market fit.
Product market fit. Product market fit.
I mean, the name of the show is Product Market Fit.
Think back to the last few months, the last few years as you've been running the startup. How many different founders have helped you out? The reality is founders help each other out. That's just who founders are. They pay it forward. So help a founder out. Take literally 5 seconds, take your phone out of your pocket and hit 5 stars. Alon, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, good to be here.
Dude, so I mean, your latest startup, PointFive, I mean, you guys raised right out of the gate 16 million, and then 5 months later, another 20, which is just it's insane. This is not 21, 22. This is last year. Obviously, a lot of things are going right, but before we were talking, I think a lot of that has to do with you and the team and that belief and the credibility you've built in your first venture, which was acquired for $350 million. And so we'll spend most of this time talking about PointFive, but let's start at the beginning. What was that first startup? What was IntSights about? And let's go through that story a little bit. And then we can kind of contrast and compare how you handled, starting both different ventures.
Absolutely. So first of all, IntSights was a cybersecurity startup. It was really about giving visibility to organizations about threats that can be identified out there in the wild, in the internet. So we were monitoring the dark web, cybercrime forums, social media, and other places on the internet, and essentially surfacing enterprise with different risks and threats. We identified that, like people planning to attack their company, vulnerability to their websites, leaked credentials, basically anything you can find out there. Now, we came to that, I'd say by mistake. I think Guy, my co-founder, and I were thinking about an idea for over a year until we finally settled.
And you were what? Where were you at that time? What were you doing? What was your full-time role?
Yeah, so back then I was in the university.
Okay.
So actually it was kind of fun. I finished my military service. I did another year in yeshiva. And then I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. But I had no idea how you become an entrepreneur. What's the first step you take? And I was thinking, okay, what can I do? And I had no idea. So I went to university to get a degree like everyone else. And I started actually studying law and accounting. Okay, who would have imagined? I started law and accounting, and I think in the second, third month, I realized this whole studying university is not really for me. On the first couple of months, I founded a nonprofit for financial literacy for teenagers. And then I started thinking about, okay, what business I want to build. And Guy, my co-founder, and I thought for a year about what we want to do until we settled for a cybersecurity training company for teenagers. It was called Cyber School. And
how does your mind, just to contrast and compare between us? I went to university thinking I wanted to be a lawyer, quickly decided I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I was studying economics. So not that far off, right, from this law and accounting world. And except that when I decided I wanted to start something, my mind was in my world, like a university student, what are we doing? We're studying or we're partying, And so my first business was around partying and alcohol, and then it was tutoring, things were really close. But you went to cyber security. Do you know what I mean? How does your brain end up there?
Yeah. So to be fair, I had cybersecurity background from my military service.
Okay.
Which is also an interesting story for itself, because I actually started in infantry in a commando unit in the IDF. And after a couple months of training, I hurt my hearing during training. Okay, it's some hearing loss, some beeping, not too pleasant. And they kicked me out of infantry and they moved me to the intelligence corps. And this is where I actually got my cybersecurity background. Now, in the high school, I wanted nothing to do with computer science. It was the last thing I would do in high school. Although my
So you were pissed then when you got pulled off, I have to assume, from infantry and had to go kind of to the back
I
room.
was devastated. I was devastated. Like the day they let me know I'm, kicked out, it was probably the hardest day of my life. In retrospective, it built my career, my success. It was probably one of the most amazing,
huge inflection point. Yeah.
that ever happened to me. Like at that time, I remember like that day when they announced it to me, I went back to my team for training and they told me, Alon, okay, go training. And I just couldn't, I just went to my room. I started crying. It was horrible. But in retrospective, it was the best thing that ever happened to me because then I moved to the intelligence corps. I learned, cybersecurity, I understood how cyber attacks work. And that's what eventually led me to found cyber school. And then later on, IntSights as well.
What sort of things by that? Like, this is fascinating. I had a few people like from the defense industry that became entrepreneurs on the podcast. One of them, founder of ID.me, and then the other one, the founder of Huntress. And I'm just fascinated. The Huntress guy, he was in the NSA before. I'm just fascinated. Like, what sort of things are you doing to the extent that you can share? But like, what sort of things were you doing in terms of cybersecurity when you're working like in the kind of IDF unit, but on the cyber side?
Yeah, for sure. I actually wrote a book about it. You see right above me. So I wrote a book about it. It's about the Israeli cybersecurity industry. It's what makes it so successful. It's called The Battle for Your Computer. And actually, one of the main points of the book is how the Israeli defense forces drive the cybersecurity industry ahead. So I did the research about it. I wrote about it, so I can definitely talk about it. And I think the main point is that one, Israel as a state has a mandatory military service. So basically it gets to pick and choose the best and the brightest and the most talented in technology in Israel in high school. And then they put them all together in one place and give them cyber challenges to collect information with cyber technologies to get into computers and phones of our enemies and get intelligence from there. So you put so many talented people in technology and you tell them, hey, do cyber together. And that one brings together a lot of talented people that become co-founders. So one of my co-founders in IntSights and now PointFive is Gal, who we work together at 8200. And now in PointFive, our third co-founder is Amir, who also was us in the same unit. And you build your network there, but also it kind of give you the basis you need to do cybersecurity. So when you go out and you want to be an entrepreneur and you ask yourself, okay, what do I want to do? Hey, I have this edge in cybersecurity. That becomes the default of many Israeli entrepreneurs. Okay. Now, one more point that you need to understand is that over time, the intelligence units and 8200 in specific, they become these places where that will create a lot of entrepreneurs. So if you have a direction, a desire to become an entrepreneur, and you get 8200, you're starting to think, okay, maybe I can be an entrepreneur like many other 8200 alumni. And at some point, you work with someone, and he finished his service, and he starts to start. He's like, hey, this moron worked with me like 2 days ago in the same room. If he can do a startup, I can also do a startup. Okay. And it becomes this place where it creates a lot of people. It builds the confidence and plant the idea that, hey, you can also be a successful entrepreneur. And just to help you understand like the vibe. So imagine the food court in our base, typical military food court. You go with your tray and someone like pours something unrecognized in your plate, etc. It's the same in every place in the Israeli Defense Forces. But in the intelligence units, 8200, for example, you take the same tray, you take the same food, you sit down with your friends, and you talk about the latest technologies and what startup you're going to found when you finish your military service. That can be a typical discussion topic over lunch. And that's what builds the dreams and the confidence in people to become entrepreneurs right after.
It's pretty incredible. I mean, obviously there's a YC kind of accelerator type nature to that, almost pre-YC, because people come in there with no idea of what they want to build, and they're just kind of networking. But that networking piece and that sharing of ideas obviously is critical, and that's part of what makes like Silicon Valley so successful, and obviously Israel, I think, as well. The other thing though that strikes me is cybersecurity itself is one of the oftentimes governments are like laggards or not, certainly not at the edge, of many industries. But if you think about it, cybersecurity is probably the industry where governments are actually at the frontier, like need the absolute latest, best, willing to take risks on new stuff. And so if you want to learn about cyber, like there's few better places to be than in that unit with those people. And so then that starts to make sense, like why all these cybersecurity kind of companies come out of Israel as well.
Yeah, and let me double click on that, because it's not that governments are in the cutting edge of doing cybersecurity. They typically aren't. Why? They don't need to, because they're not connected to the internet. So the risks are very different than the risks of the average company. So it's not that you get the cybersecurity experience in the government necessarily. The special experience that you get in governments is getting the attacker perspective. Because basically, as an individual, let's say I want to be a hacker, I want to get into other people's computers, steal their data, whatever. For me as a personal person, it will be very, very hard because it's illegal. And if I'm caught...
Right. So just to be clear, like the government is not cybersecurity, it's cyber attack. Like that's really what they're doing. Interesting.
Exactly. And what you can do as part of the government, it's something that you probably will never be able to do as a personal or one-man show hacker. Because one, you get tools and budgets you won't find anywhere else. And two, you're not doing anything illegal. So you can basically do, almost whatever you want with certain limitations of human rights, etc. But, besides the human rights limitation, you're not afraid you'll be caught by anyone. So you can do like the craziest things, run tests on the craziest cyber attacks, and you have all the tools and support to do that, and you're not afraid to get caught.
So you get to like push the envelope on the weapons, and then you come out and you're like, well, these are the latest weapons. Like, how about this as defense, right? Like, let's build the shield.
Exactly.
Cool.
So, we like to say in Israel, like, the average pitch of the intelligence course person is, hey, dear Chief Information Security Officer, let me help you against people like me.
Right, exactly. Well, it's the same with Huntress. It was exactly that. Like he was like, I was the NSA. I was doing these attacks. You know what I mean? And then I come out. I'm like, maybe I'll do the other side now. So that totally foots. Okay, so then from there, then the idea has. So now we're back to like the original story, right? So you have this idea, and that makes sense now that it's in cybersecurity. So what was that original idea then for IntSights? It was a school, you said, right?
Yeah, so back then, actually, my co-founder Guy, he had like a sidekick job of consulting to cybersecurity professionals and practitioners in different financial organizations. And back then, he noticed that when it comes to intelligence, to understanding what threats you have outside your organization, not in your computers, not in your cloud infrastructure, what happens outside, what hackers are planning, what hackers are doing, what type of stolen data they took from you and how they sell on the dark web, this process was very, very manual. Like you had to get a manual service to go through all these forums, all these places and find these indications. And because it was manual, the coverage was lacking. You were always getting everything like a month or two after it already happened. So it wasn't real time and it wasn't really scalable. So our idea was very, very simple. It's just automating this process, automatically collecting the data from these sources, and also implementing AI to actually map all the data into threats and threats that are targeting our customers in specific. So we can surface to them what is relevant to them, like credentials, vulnerabilities to their websites, hackers planning to do something against their websites, etc., etc. So that was the idea. I can tell we were really, really naive. Like we did not really understand the competition. We weren't 100% sure what is our edge. Today I talk to entrepreneurs. They're so much mature than we were back then. Like it's a completely different world today.
I find the same thing. 100. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the amount of content that's out there, like podcasts like these and others, or the YC stuff, Paul Graham. Like, I don't know what it is, but founders are much smarter today. Even I see it like the way I see it for what it's worth is like the idea of like bootstrapping or being lean or mining. Like for me, it was like, I just want to build a unicorn. Like that's how I thought about it, 10 years ago. And like, whatever, go or bust. And I think now like founders are like, let's be small, let's hit product market fit, like let's do it this way, except at least for the first one. So I don't know how you see it, but I totally agree.
Yeah, so we didn't know what is a unicorn when we started IntSights. We didn't know there is a word like that. And we were also naive to the extent that we didn't really know what's going on in the industry. We just met with a few customers. We thought there was a huge pain and we went for it. That's it. Today, like you said, there is a lot of content, podcasts, a lot of posts on LinkedIn, a lot of blog posts that people are following, and they're building themselves a framework to work with that actually can generate success. And that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. But for us, it was just like figuring out things as we go. Just so you'd understand, we came with the idea, we started developing the software and selling it, and we had no idea we want to raise capital. At that point, we were like, okay, let's just build a business, right? Build a product, start selling it, and see what happens. That was how we thought about it. Until one day, one of our partners was like, hey, why don't you raise capital? You have a great idea. You have a great team. And we're like, you know what? That can actually be a good idea. He's like, I know this VC that might be interested. And he connected us to Glilot Capital. And we came with no presentation, no idea about the competition, the market. We just had our own experience with our idea. We had some mock-ups of what we do. And this is how we came for the first meeting. And only after they told us, hey, we want you to come with answers about 1, 2, 3, 4, we started like putting together some data points and some more thought into how we plan to go to market, for example, what will be our strategy, etc. But before that, we had nothing. We really literally had nothing. And we were lucky that Glilot in specific, they knew about our space. And they almost made an investment in our space a few months earlier. So they knew the space very well. We didn't have to convince them about the space. And that's what made it possible.
And where was the company at that time? Did you have customers already, or you were just kind of in that build mode?
So it was very interesting because we were entrepreneurs that were engaged with customers from day one. Like we never waited for something to be perfect. We didn't even wait for something to work, honestly. Like we started with building the UI and started selling. And we said, okay, if a customer closes, we'll do things manually behind the scenes until it will work. And we'll figure out as we go. So it was kind of interesting because when we got to our investors or fundraising, we also already had some active process with potential customers. Again, UI and me as the backend, okay, doing everything manually.
As in doing, like, because the whole point was automating these processes, but you're basically actually just doing the processes. The search, is that what you mean?
In the first few months, yeah, that's what we did. Because we said, okay, we want to start engagement. We want to start selling. It will take us time to build the software. Let's, in the meantime, build the UI. We'll do it manually behind the scenes. We'll learn how to do it right through the manual work, and we'll automate it over time. That was the idea, which is, by the way, was a very good idea.
A very good idea, which, by the way, like to the point that you were naive and like you didn't know what to do, you basically like did the lean startup playbook without, reading about it.
Exactly, because we had good business instincts, okay? And we wanted business. And that's how it got to a point where one day my co-founder guy, he was like on a meeting with a partner, and we were like very soon going to develop the automation. So he didn't want to tell him that we're still doing some of the things manually, okay? And this partner on the spot said, you know what? Run your platform on one of my customers, okay? And he was like, okay, everything is manual behind the scenes, what I'm going to do? And he was like, calling me, hey, Alon, and now sitting with this partner, can you turn on the platform on this customer? And I'm in the garage fixing my car or something. I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? And I was just open my computer hotspot and, started, showing some stuff. That's how we operate until a few months later, we raised the funds and we automated this stuff.
But it's funny. Like I think somebody who's been through it kind of would get it. I think from the outside looking in, it always looks so haphazard and almost like so messy in a bad way. But it's actually really good because to the extent you're not doing that, especially as a first-time founder, I think second-time founder, it's different, especially if you understand your industry and you can kind of go forward. But you overbuild otherwise, right? Like that's the danger is as a first-time founder who's trying to figure it out. If you're not hacking it along the way, then the risk is you overbuild infrastructure, you overbuild product, you overbuild marketing or whatever piece you want to like get right, get polished. And then you realize your core assumptions were wrong anyway. So it was all complete waste and you got to start again. And so like by doing it like piece by piece, you're always just right there. And if you realize that something's not useful, you just don't build it, right? Or you can kind of make these changes faster. So I find it's weird like that. Like you kind of hear it and you're like, man, that's so insane. But it's actually quite rational.
I will tell you, the way we did it at IntSights, it's a lot better than the more common problem of people overbuilding before they meet customers. But it wasn't ideal, honestly. Not because we shouldn't have engaged with customers, but we had to do it a lot more managed, and we need to put more thought into that. Because what happened at some point is that every customer that asked for a specific use case, we started doing it manually. And that created more expectations to automate more stuff. And it was hard to catch up. It took us significant amount of time to catch up on all the manual stuff that we did. And I think retrospectively, one, I would only do something manually if I know I can automate it within 3-4 months. I wouldn't do something manually that I know it will take me at least a year to automate, which is something we did in IntSights, and eventually it slowed us down.
Because you're stuck doing manual processes that you can't automate
because
out.
we raise expectations from our customers to get that as part of the platform, and now we have to deliver it consistently. And until it's automated, we have to deliver it manually. So that actually create a bit of I don't know, a hurdle or delay in our growth because of that. So I think as you build your startup, you always need to think you need to create like this hockey stick. Okay. And if you want to create this hockey stick, I'm talking from product perspective. Let's leave go-to-market aside for a second. But just from product perspective, you have to make sure that, you hit the customer use case, but within very short time, you automate it so you can start replicating it very fast. Now, if you do what every customer needs immediately, even if you cannot automate within 3 months, then very quickly, so in the beginning, you will see more business because you'll close this customer that are getting to you and you'll convince them that, you can deliver it. But if you fast forward a year later, you're being slowed down because a lot of the work is still manual. And this is where you'll see the slowness in your business. This is where it will hit you later on. So I'm all for engaging fast with customers, doing things manual for proof of concept, and showing that it's actually working and can be delivered, but only do things that you can automate very quickly afterwards.
I get that. Yeah, it becomes a drag because you have so many people, so much time, energy spent on delivering things that are manual that you can't scale out, and so you can't kind of just rinse and repeat, right? And you're kind of stuck in the old versus moving to the new. So I get that. So question for you, so how much did you end up raising in that original seed round?
You mean for IntSights?
Yes.
So IntSights, our first one was $2 million. Okay, very far from the 10 that I did with PointFive. And I can tell you, that was the standard back then. You raise a seed round, it was $2 million. Today, seed round for a cybersecurity company is no less than $6 million. Okay, things is really, really changed.
Because what year are we talking about right now?
We're talking about 2015.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about 2015. And, back then, that was the standard. We didn't even dream about 6, 7, 8. That was insane. Our A round was 7. Okay. So it was a different world. You had to be a lot more scrappy. You had to work a lot, smarter. You didn't have a lot of money to waste. But I think it created, a pretty solid company. At least for us, it worked.
And how quickly did kind of revenue ramp up through that early period? Was it kind of 1 to 3 to 10, that kind of trajectory?
So we actually started very fast. Like in the first year, I told you we didn't really have a product, and we hit like $1 million ARR. The second year was already 4.
Wow.
So it was like, yeah, we
That's a
like
big year.
quadrupled. Yeah, we quadrupled it. So yeah, the growth was very, very fast. Like we hit a real, a pain point. There wasn't really an integration to the product. So the POC took us like, 2 weeks, including the integration. So everything went very quickly.
And at exit, I assume you were doing tens of millions of ARR at that point.
Yeah, we were at 30 plus.
30 plus. That's awesome. And so walk me through this. I know I want to move to PointFive. We got pulled in a bunch of different interesting threads. So you ended up exiting for 350 million. What year?
It was 2021.
What did that feel like? Like I asked that, and I mean it purely from the emotional perspective of a founder who really goes from starting something, fulfilling, there's the point where you turn your idea into reality and you're seeing it. And I think that's an amazing feeling as a founder. And then there's the next point, which is where you actually get that quote unquote success, right? Because sometimes people build a company to never sell it. And I get that. But I think in many cases, you do imagine at one point there'll be an exit event, whether it's an IPO or an acquisition or whatever. So what does it feel like, honestly? Maybe walk me through that process. But more than anything, once that money come in and it hits the bank account and the thing is closed and you're like, wow. What's that like?
So I'll give you a counterintuitive answer. Okay. It feels like emptiness.
Wow.
Honestly. Yeah. Because I'm very much driven by building and creating. That's what drives me. That's what gets me excited in the morning. That's what energizes me through the day. And that's what eventually fills my day. The minute we sold the company, it was a complete anti-climax experience. Because for me, suddenly, okay, it's not yours anymore. You don't have the responsibility anymore of making the company work. And just the motivation energy goes a bit lower. Okay. I can tell that I did come very motivated to learn from Rapid7 and do amazing things in Rapid7. But also I realized things go very slow and the bureaucracy, etc. It also took me, down a bit at some point. So actually the feeling was a complete anti-climax.
That's crazy.
And it felt like, I don't know, I think it's like a kid, growing up, living home. You're proud of him. You're happy he's your kid. You're happy you invest in him. You want to see him succeed. You want to see him take off. But, there is something hard with it, something, in your heart that's like, oh my God, I have to say goodbye now. And it's not my responsibility anymore. And I have to let go. And that was my overall feeling. So, the money in the bank is nice. I can do more things now in the world. I know, buy a better house. Okay. Basically. But beyond that, my life remained the same, only with less fulfillment with what I do.
I'm going to ask you for a small favor, a tiny little favor. In fact, it's not even, now that I think about it, it's not even really a favor for me. I'm actually trying to help you do a favor for you. Just hit the follow button. You won't miss out on the next episode. You'll see everything that we release. If you don't want to listen to an episode, you just skip it, but at least you don't miss out. And so then how do you shift from there? Do you stay at the acquirer for a while, or how does the idea of PointFive of starting over kind of come to you?
So honestly, I've always knew I'm going to start over. It was something that was obvious to me, more or less from the time I sold IntSights. I told you about my feelings after I sold IntSights, so it was pretty obvious. And actually, our new startup, PointFive, is not in cybersecurity. That wasn't obvious at all. That was actually the result of our personal experience at Rapid7. So as we became part of Rapid7, a global enterprise managing a lot of cloud, okay, also a lot of spend in the cloud, we became part of their ongoing cloud cost optimization efforts and really felt the challenges around that. So how do you map where do you have inefficiencies and inefficient use of your infrastructure? How you give the engineers the right context? How you make it easy for them to take action? All of that didn't exist. And our ability at Rapid7 to actually drive the efficiency of the infrastructure and reduce cost was very, very difficult, especially when you have different engineering groups across the globe. So we really felt this pain on the personal level as we were at Rapid7, and that also drove us to actually go and fix it by ourselves.
But this is what exactly? This is like the productivity of engineers or something else around managing developers?
So the core business value is around putting cloud costs under control and make sure you make efficient use of the infrastructure. So you will spend less, but essentially the main gap in making it happen today is how you create this engineer experience that get them engaged and lead to action. Because in the end of the day, the finance team, they cannot make changes to the cloud infrastructure. They don't have the knowledge, they don't have the access, they don't have the capability to do that. In the end of the day, it has to be an engineering job. And how you make this transition from financial problem to an engineering problem and enable the engineers to do that is exactly the problem that we tackle.
And is it getting, because I know engineers will spin up instances and kind of, especially in a big org, like, to do a project, and then maybe they'll leave it because like, why not? And they're paying for it. Is it kind of like getting them to think more rationally about it somehow? Or is it something else about kind of setting these instances up more efficiently kind of in the first place?
So basically we talk about deep waste. So our thesis is that, you have the basic stuff. Hey, I left something turned on and I forgot about it, which exists. It has to be taken care of. We also take care of that. But basically there is a whole concept of like hidden waste that people are not even aware of. Why? Because it's very deep on the architectural level, on the way you configure your managed services, things that you really have to read, like the cloud provider's manual to understand how they work and how to do it better. And people don't have this knowledge, especially when you think about AWS, they have like 100 different services. No one can master all of them. So we developed this technology where we can connect your environment and actually map where you have this deep waste and essentially provide engineers with the findings, with the context, and with tools that can automate the remediation.
So you're like helping them re-architect kind of the DevOps part, or like a lot of the infrastructure DevOps things that they're doing.
Exactly. So we help them do a better use of their infrastructure.
It's one thing to see a problem, another thing to decide, I'm the right person to solve it, especially given the success. Like, I think the easiest, simplest, most obvious thing for you to do would be like, listen, I already sold one for, over 300 in cyber. Like, I've been in cyber for a long time. Like, let's do it again. Let's go for $1 billion this time, sort of thing. So what really pulls you enough for you to say, you know what, it's still technical, so it's not like it's so far from left field, but it's different enough. And yet you still kind of went forward and did that.
So obviously cybersecurity was my default. I have my network there. I have my experience there. I wrote a book about cybersecurity. So that was the obvious, absolutely. But I have to say, this is a problem we came across unintentionally. And we really got excited about it. Why? My first criterion for a new startup, a new idea is the market big enough? And the answer here was absolutely yes. Like, we talked to dozens of customers and evaluated the big enterprise will pay high 6 figures for a solution like that, and even 7 figures for the bigger enterprises.
Because of the savings, right? It's like, I'm going to pay 20% or 10% of whatever you save me.
The
that
savings,
kind of back of the envelope.
The pain, and also the operational burden. Think that today, like the centralized function in the organization, they're chasing engineers all day long. They're like wasting tons of time on making these type of things happen. So it's also a huge operational burden. But also you have huge cloud savings as well. So it was a big market. 2, we got really excited about the idea behind it, because we felt that 1, it's a real cultural change. Cloud efficiency is the engineering responsibility, and they need the tools to make it happen. And really, from day 1, we said that our vision is that engineers will say, cost efficiency is part of my job. And if my infrastructure is not efficient, I probably did a bad engineering job. So if you have bugs in your software, everyone knows that you did a bad engineering job. That's obvious. Okay. I think today people, starting to realize that also if you have security issues in your code, it's also bad engineering. So we wanted to lead the revolution of engineers understanding that if my infrastructure is not cost efficient, I'm not as good engineer as I could have been.
How do you do that? Like, how do you get people to care about something they haven't historically cared about, needed to care about?
Yeah, so there isn't a silver bullet here. There is a bunch of stuff. One, you have to go top down. Like you have to make sure that like, I don't know, the CFO, the CTO, that their agenda and they're starting to push it down. We also give them tools to push it down, to measure each team, to surface to each team, where are the issues, etc. In parallel, you have to also go bottom up. So you have to make sure that you give engineers the findings that they would find interesting and be intrigued by them. So the fact that we give like this deep waste and deep findings, that gets engineers very interested. Hey, I wasn't aware of that. Like I didn't have no idea that setting this configuration would create these types of costs. And suddenly our platform becomes something that they learn from. So their ability to learn new things and become better engineers with PointFive is something that get them engaged and interested. So basically you want to go top down and bottom up in parallel, and also give tools that would make it very, very easy for them to take action. I think very often people fall in, focusing on delivering the right message, which is important, which is great. And I told you what is the message we're delivering. But if you don't make it also easy for them on the day-to-day, it won't work. Like the best idea in the world, right? The most revolutionizing idea in the world won't work if you don't have the tools to make it work, right? I always like to give an example. Feminism, amazing movement, okay? Extremely important. It made a huge change, but also part of its ability to make change was technology that supported it, okay? The fact that, dishwasher and all the technology in the kitchen allowed women to become a lot more independent, which is amazing. So it always have to be an idea with the tools to make it happen. And that's what we're trying to do at PointFive.
Well, and I think what you're doing is you kind of, the top down makes sure that at the organizational level, cost efficiency in engineering is something that's cared about and rewarded. And then the tools at the bottoms up is, hey, you want to like move up, you want to be seen as successful, which, who doesn't? These are things you can actually do. And all of a sudden they'll be considered a big win because your organization cares about this. So that makes sense. So I guess then let's move through the narrative. You have this problem, you start talking to people. When do you make that decision and you're like, okay, we're gonna quit? Do you have like golden handcuffs you have to wait for, or like what's the timing like?
Yeah. So we had golden handcuffs, but we gave away most of the gold. Yes, we actually had like a year and a half, a retention period. Okay. And we gave most of the holdback, okay, to go and start PointFive.
Incredible. They're talking millions, I have to assume.
Yes, but I have to say, like, I don't feel sorry for this decision for a second. Really excited about this opportunity and we decided to go for it. And so far it's very, very successful. So
when was this, by the way? When did you start PointFive officially?
We started 2 years ago. Exactly 2 years ago, like February 1st, 2023.
The difference, I would imagine, one of the differences between PointFive and IntSights is, I think, the funding. I assume you kind of raise money right out of the gate.
Yeah, so with the funding was very different. There it was 2, here it was 10, 2 months later, 16.
There it was hard, here it was easy. I mean, it's funny what a $350 million exit will do to VCs.
I have to say, the market also is a lot bigger. So that's also a major part of it. Like, when we went for IntSights, I have an idea. I said, okay, let's do it. I had no idea about the market whatsoever. For me, hey, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, had an idea, let's give it a shot. What can happen? And for PointFive, it was a lot harder to choose an idea because you wanted to make sure that it's the right market and you have big enough potential. And we didn't make the move before we did this validation. Also, you're a second-time founder, you had a success. You want to make sure the second one is a lot bigger success. Otherwise, you won't go for it.
Raises the bar, yeah.
Yeah, so it was a lot harder to actually make a decision to go for it. It's funny, I think maybe from a lot of people, it's a lot harder to make a decision to go for the first one. For me, it was a lot harder to make a decision to go for the second one. Because for the first one, hell yeah, why not? Worst case, we'll fail. Whatever, who knows me, Well, the second startup, I already have a reputation.
You have a reputation, yeah, exactly. You've got something to save. You've got something to lose. I'll say the other thing, like, to the extent that, second time repeat founders, they certainly make a lot less avoidable mistakes because they've learned so much. But the types of mistakes that they do make tend to be different. And what I've noticed is sometimes it's almost like the over polish, because at the beginning, like you said, it's one step in front of the other. You're not thinking far ahead. You're just doing whatever you think makes the most sense at that time. And obviously, if you're a repeat founder, then you had some success in the first one, so it kind of worked. A lot of times there's an overcorrection where on the second one, you're like, oh, if only we had done, nicer logo, and if only we had had a nicer website, and if only we had had like nicer this, and you start polishing all these sort of things. And then you forget about the thing that matters, which is like delivering value, to customers. So it doesn't sound like you did that, but I'm just saying like that it's just getting into the mindset of a repeat founder. It's so different, the second time around.
Absolutely. And I agree with your observation. I think this is the main, a challenge or problem that second time founders are facing. And we really tried very hard not to do that, I have to say. But like I told you, I think at IntSights, we weren't, I would say, responsible enough to make sure that we're not doing something that we cannot scale very fast. And at PointFive, we did make sure that we're only doing things that are completely scalable and can be automated within month to month. And the advantage of this approach is that it allows you to create this hockey stick where we build something, it helps you accelerate because it's now scalable and it can be replicatable. You can replicate across multiple customers, and you can, in POCs, you can run it with multiple customers. So it really helps you accelerate, create like this hockey stick motion. And yeah, I think there were some places where we should have been more scrappy, I have to say. Okay. There were some places, but overall, I think it was done a lot better than on the first time.
And so you raised 10 out of the gate and then another 16 million. How much later?
And another 6 in safe a few months later. And then we just closed another 20 million round a few months ago.
Okay. So 36 million raised total. Is that right?
Yes.
And what's driven you to raise such big amounts so fast?
I have to say it was opportunistic, first of all. So we've been reached out by VCs that showed interest and they made an offer, so we decided to consider it. But basically, you have to decide if you optimize for a dilution or you optimize for capturing the market fast. That's always how I see the trade-off between raising fast and delaying it for later. So if you delay for later, you have more ARR, more case studies, more references, you can get higher valuation. If you do it earlier, then you can just grow faster. For me, we saw that we're able to sell, there is amazing feedback from the market, and we really wanted to expand to Azure and GCP so we can also serve this market. And actually, Azure GCP would double our potential TAM and more. And I really wanted to capture that fast. We felt there is a good opportunity in the market that we have to capture before we're losing momentum there. And when we got an offer that was in the right terms, that was more or less where we wanted to see our A round, we just decided to go for it and accelerate.
I think that's one thing that first-time founders sometimes get wrong is just, and it's, you have to, it's a privileged position to be in, to get inbound, to get offers, to kind of get solicited. But a lot of times people will look and say, wow, they raised so much money so fast, especially money that they didn't really need. Like this happened, like I post a lot about, different founder stories. And sometimes I'm like, they were profitable, but then they raised like $20 million. Like people are like, why would you ever do that? And it's like, first of all, you don't say, like when you have a great deal in front of you that you don't have to do any work for, where you think about maybe in 6 months, if we did a lot of work, maybe we'd get a bit better deal, but not much better. Why wouldn't you take it? Why wouldn't you be opportunistic? And then the other side is like, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, you've got to have some sort of optionality baked into your fundraising strategy. Like you can't over optimize for every single percentage point, because then when you might need the money for whatever reason, it might be harder to get. And I think these are things that you learn, you kind of live and you learn, and you realize, wait a second, easy money doesn't come that often.
Yeah. And I also think there is a huge merit to being number one in your market. I prefer 8% in a company that is number one in its market than 15% in a company that is number 3 or 4. And if you want to be number one, you have to invest a lot of resources in developing the product, building the brand, doing the go-to-market so everyone will hear about you as fast as possible. In today's world, startup ideas are being replicated very, very fast. So it's not about the right idea. It's about how fast you execute. And money is one of the most important tools for you to execute fast and make sure you capture your market share.
And, fundraising aside, when you think about traction in terms of revenue and customers, and you compare the early days of IntSights to the early days of PointFive, what does that look like?
You mean from fundraising perspective?
No, not fundraising, like traction, like customers, revenue, that side of the business.
Yeah, so I have to say that, I think today, the tools for, go-to-market, engaging with customers are a lot more advanced. So it's actually easier, to get in front of customers a lot faster. But from traction perspective, in the end of the day, it's about the pain you're solving and how painful it is. If you're hitting a real pain, you will see traction. You'll see traction very fast. If not, then not. Okay. So at the end of the day, I think it's a lot more, what pain you're solving than whether or not there is tools or there is attention of customers in general.
But are you seeing this move even faster from a customer adoption perspective than those first days at IntSights? Yeah.
No, of course. Because we also, listen, at the end of the day, we have a reputation. So people already know us. It's a lot easier to get a credit from prospects to something that we build today. And we just know how to do it a lot better. How to do the work on social media, to get the right presence, how to create, attention, do creative stuff. We just ran a campaign where we sent boxes to people in our industry, Finos practitioners, with a challenge, and they had to solve it and upload the video to LinkedIn. It was a competition, and the first prize was donated $500 to a cause you like. Okay, that created a huge buzz. This is something I wouldn't have the guts to do at IntSights. It would have felt too edgy. At PointFive, now that I have a lot more confidence, I know how to do this type of stuff, it's a lot easier for me to execute these type of things. So we also know how to do things a lot better to create attention. So obviously the traction is much, much higher.
How fast did you get to $1 million in ARR?
In PointFive?
Yeah.
It took us 6 months since launch.
Wow, that's incredible. And I assume it's kind of you're kind of in the high single million sort of thing of ARR now.
Yes.
That's amazing. Congrats, man.
Thank you. We're just a year since we launched the product, by the way. So we're just celebrating 1 year in a few weeks.
What advice do you have? We talked a lot about the first time, but when you think about second time founders, especially, and now you've gone through it for 2 years as a second time founder, what advice do you have for them?
So one, I'm not sure if it's advice, but something they should know. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to feel like you're not going to do any mistakes because you've done all of them on the first time. You're going to do a lot of mistakes, and you have to remember that it's fine. It's inevitable. Everyone does mistakes. Even I'm sure the third and fourth time founders also makes mistakes, and it's fine. I think it's all about making corrections and keep moving ahead full force as fast as possible.
I think that's completely right. I think you go in, I always remember thinking man, if I could do it all over again, I'd just be so much better. You know what I mean? Everything would be so much better. And sometimes it's true. And, sometimes it isn't. It is, I have said this also to first time founders who sometimes are treating that first one like the test, right? And I'm listen, maybe it is. And the second one's even bigger, but maybe it isn't. Sometimes you stumble upon a pain point in a market so large, and yeah, it's by happenstance, but you could, go down the list of your, Airbnbs and Facebook and this and that. And so you don't want to get it in your head too much, I don't think, as a first time founder, that this is just my first one, and maybe I'll get a little exit, and then my second one will kind of be my real one. You can't really plan it out that way.
I agree. And I think if you're a first time founder and you have something good in your hands, go for it. Don't think I need to, do the exit and cash out, and my next one will be a lot better, because you might, hit huge pain, huge market. You should go full force. There are amazing companies that were built by first-time founders. I don't need to give you names. You all know them. I know by Apple and Google and Facebook. They're all first-timers. Okay, so always remember that. So if you have something good, go for it.
When did you feel like you had true product market fit? And let's do it a little different, maybe like true product market fit with IntSights, then true product market fit with PointFive. And if there's any like material differences, maybe you can contrast and compare a little bit.
So first of all, I think that actually at IntSights, we had a faster product market fit. So I think like within 2 or 3 months, really felt like, we have a good fit since we, started selling. So that was easier and faster. Actually in PointFive, I think it was very clear for us from day one that we hit the right pain point, but it did took us like in a few months with design partners to make sure we're solving it in the right way. Right. So I think like it just had like this design partnership period of like, I don't know, it was a few months that we had to go through it. We just didn't have it IntSights. We just skipped it at IntSights. So that's also tells you that like product market fit, it's not only, hey, I'm first time, I'm second time, how much experience I have. Sometimes you hit the right buttons immediately because you have luck or because whatever reason, and it just works. So it's only about listening to the market, listening to customers, understanding where you're already there. And when you're there, and you need to start scaling up.
Awesome, man. Well, listen, thanks so much for jumping on the show. It's been amazing, and I'm sure founders have learned a ton from both your journeys.
I enjoyed it very much, and thank you for having me.
85% of people who listen to the show just started listening to it this year. You're probably one of those people. In fact, the odds are 85%. Guess what? You need to go back because there are over 100 other episodes that you need to check out that are just as good, if not better, than this one. Don't miss out.